Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and one of the questions a subscriber asked me yesterday is why do so many pro bodybuilders and serious bodybuilders over the years seem to get hooked on pain pills, narcotics, things like that? How does this actually happen? And just so people understand, I'm not making this up. If you guys go watch the channel of other people who've been in the scene a long time, like Ward and some of these other people, they've talked about these stories. A lot of these guys have talked about their own previous drug habits with various painkillers. And so the question becomes, how does this happen? Well, it's really interesting because the first time I heard about this many years ago was back in Muscular Develop magazine. I believe it was like John Romano wrote an actual article on this talking about Nubain and some of these other drugs that people were taking. And it's pretty simple when you think about it. A lot of guys are like, well, how could this happen? Quite simply, and as I always say, and as many coaches have said over the years, most pro bodybuilders, the majority of them, actually have no idea how to actually train. Their coaches oftentimes have no idea how to train. They don't know how to train in a way that doesn't stress the connective tissue, the joints, things like that. You always see them doing exercises and workloads that put stress on the connective tissue, say in their triceps. It puts stress on their elbows. It puts stress on their shoulder joints or rotator cuffs. They train with excessive amounts of various isolation movements. And the thing you need to realize is that there are going to be a number of exercises and movements that over time will inflame connective tissue or injure you if done certain ways. Bodybuilders tend to use an approach with a body part of just throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it. They just throw 5 or 6 or 7 different exercises at a muscle group. Well, invariably, they're going to start regularly doing the ones that are going to hurt them in addition to doing the safe ones. They're going to tend to do things that are mind-muscle connection. Where do I feel the burn? Instead of thinking about what actually works it effectively, they go by feel. Well, if something actually hurts your connective tissue, it inflames the tendons and things, you're going to tend to feel that more during the exercise. You're going to feel that more intense contraction sometimes. So oftentimes their focus on the mind-muscle connection ends up leading to nagging injuries, nagging pains, inflammation. They tend to, whenever something starts hurting, rather than say, hey, maybe it's my exercise selection or the way I'm performing things or just doing excessive workload for one muscle group, they'll start wrapping it up. Worst thing you can possibly do when something starts hurting is to put wraps or sleeves on it, because that doesn't address what's causing the injury. It just makes it seem to get better so you can keep doing it even harder. And accordingly, they tend to be in a lot of pain. Because of the workload they subject themselves to doing this, bodybuilders oftentimes over the years start to be in pain all the time because they don't know how to train. They don't know how to pick exercises. They don't know how to deload or program correctly. They hurt. Before long, they start needing painkillers. They start taking various things to numb the pain. A lot of times it'll be simple stuff like ibuprofen and other NSAIDs. And over time, when that's not enough, oftentimes they go to prescription painkillers. They go to street drugs, things like that. And so over time, these things get introduced because rather than fix their training because they can't admit that they don't really know what they're doing, they use drugs and more drugs, and eventually they get hooked on pain pills. They get hooked sometimes on opiates. They get hooked on narcotics as a result of trying to numb the pain of not knowing how to train correctly and training the way that they do. And so when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense how this happens. And it goes back to the thing of throwing everything that you have into an endeavor and not caring about the consequences. And that's oftentimes what bodybuilding is about. That's oftentimes the mentality, but they never learn correctly because they tend to do stuff that's through tradition rather than actual knowledge. And it's just a recipe for disaster. And so when you think about it that way, that is how it actually happens. And it is really, really common if you start talking to these guys in the various circles. And as other guys who are in those circles have told you on YouTube and other places, yeah, it's very common. The pro bodybuilding world and even the amateur bodybuilding world like the NPC is chock full of people who are hooked on various opiates, narcotics, and pain pills. And the take-home message there, guys, because you see how extreme that can be careful about taking your advice from bodybuilders. If you're just trying to get into shape and you don't want to have to suffer all the negative consequences of their lifestyle, factor that in when you start taking advice from these guys. Just because they're massive and ripped doesn't mean that they actually know how to train without hurting themselves over the years. If you see them needing pain pills, if you see them needing to wrap stuff up, that's a dead giveaway that they don't know what they're doing. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. If you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to click like down below. So I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.